In today's episode, we're going to be talking about entrepreneurship, quitting your job, and of course, living with a purpose. And I'm joined today with Zephan, who has his own podcast, and that's called The Year of Purpose. Is that right?
Yep, the Year of Purpose podcast.
Awesome. So thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, man, no problem. I'm happy to be here.
So tell me a little bit about your story and like how you got started with quitting your job.
Yeah, it really goes back to kind of how I came out of college, only because my first experience with a job was quite surprising. So, a lot of us, we graduate college and you job search for a little bit, something comes up, and you either make the mistake of taking the first thing that comes around, or within the first few options that come up, you just grab whatever job you can because that's the market. And I had a job for a marketing company doing their video work. And about a year in, the owner of it sold to a investor firm. So they basically came in and said, "Guess what? You don't have a job. We're moving to Chicago, and we're not taking you." So realizing that things aren't permanent was a big lesson that kind of translated into everything else in my life. So fast forward a little bit, I started working for the Apple Store, working at the Genius Bar, and you're in a customer service role. All you see all day is people coming in, yelling at you like, "I dropped this in the toilet. It doesn't work. I hate this." There was never anyone coming in and saying like, "Thank you so much. I love this iPhone. It lets me, video chat with my granddaughter halfway across the world." And so at the end of the day, like, you're in a customer service role, and if that's not what you enjoy doing, then obviously it's not the place for you to be. And so after a year, I had one person who really just set it all off, and all the dominoes fell into place. And this was just, another angry person, just like any other day, except for this time it was witnessed by a freelance client of mine. So, she comes in barreling into the store, locks eyes with me, ready to pounce on her prey, starts yelling and screaming. And out of the corner of my eye, I see somebody who I'd worked with and done video for in the past. And ultimately, after she got dragged away, he's like, "All right, let's go to dinner. We need to talk about this. Why are you still here? Why haven't you started working for yourself? You're really good with video." And that's when I walked in the next day and I turned in my resignation letter and started a video business.
Wow. What was said in that conversation? Because I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, you should quit." Like, what was it that made you finally be like, "Yeah, I really should quit"?
Yeah, so it kind of went back to, first of all, like, he was saying you went to college for video. So, A, like, why are you working in an Apple store? Like, this has nothing to do with what you originally set out to do in the first place. And the biggest answer was like money. I need to figure out how to afford to move out of my parents' house, and how to, start a life. And so I think the conversation really started with like, "Well, what is it that you want to do?" And I said, "Videography. I'd love to shoot videos." And he said, "All right, like, this is stuff you've been doing already. Like, you've been freelancing for me. What's stopping you from doing this full time?" And I said, "Really, like, I don't know. I don't know how to make the amount of money that I make here by doing that. It's one thing to have a one-off project here and there that makes you 500 or 600 bucks, but you have to do that a lot of times to replace a $30,000 a year salary, which even then really wasn't all that much money." Um, so a lot of it was overcoming that fear of like, how am I going to make money? And what it boiled down to is this. So he pulled out a bar napkin. We were hanging out at this steakhouse place, and it really wasn't like bigger than a post-it note. And he starts drawing these 12 steps, and he puts zero at the bottom, 30,000 at the top. And he's like, "Do you know how to make $30,000?" And I was like, "Yeah, stay here and work at the Apple store." He's like, "No, no, no, like, on your own. Do you know how to make $30,000?" And I'm like, trying to think, is there some secret that he's getting at? Because like I really have no clue what point he's trying to make. And I was like, "I don't know." And he's like, "Okay, pull out your phone, do this math for me. Let's say there's 52 weeks in a year, and on average, if you take one or two for vacation or for sick time, you're working 50 weeks out of the year, working 5 days a week, 250 days. So you're working 250 days out of the year. And if you're making $30,000 and you do the math, I'm going to bring the calculator up here, and you divide it, it's $120 a day, 250 times throughout the year." And when he said that, it just kind of clicked because it's no longer I have this huge hurdle of making $30,000. I have to make $120 250 times. It's a lot, but it's not nearly as bad. And I'm like, I could, worst case scenario, mow lawns, like paint houses. Like at the end of the day, there's nothing that you can't do in making $120 every single day. So it's totally possible. And that was really for me the biggest thing that set me up for like, all right, well, I guess now that that's not a problem anymore, let's just make the decision,
Mhm. So
So that.
what happens? So you quit your job, and then what's the next week like, or the next few months like? How do you go from just nothing to all of a sudden making some money? What was that process like?
Yeah, so it's scary at first because you wake up on the first day of your freedom and you're like, all right, like I don't really know what to do. I was so used to someone saying like you have to be here at 8 a.m. and you're going to work until 3 or 4 p.m. and your break is at this time and you get a 15-minute break here and there and here's what you're doing. And so it was very odd at first because I was used to somebody else making up my own schedule. So I had to start asking questions in a way where it was like, okay, what do I need to do? I need to make a business. What do I need to make a business? Well, I think I need a website. I think I need something legal wise to protect me. I think I need, accounting things, but like I didn't know anything under that. And so I'm like, all right, I need a website. How do I get a website? Well, I can teach myself WordPress. I've heard of WordPress. All these people use it. How do I learn WordPress? Well, where can you learn anything? YouTube. Okay. And you just keep dialing it in until you're like, all right, like I know that I need to make a website. And the way I'm going to make a website is I'm going to learn WordPress from watching YouTube videos. And I'm going to follow their instructions, find a website that somebody else made that looks good and figure out how to make that. And so breaking it down into like its core components of like, what do I need? Well, I think I need a lawyer. How do I find out if I need a lawyer? Well, there's this lovely thing called the Small Business Administration Office, and they can tell you like everything you need to know about making a business. And they've got a lot of free resources on their website. So that right there is like, okay, so I'm going to go to them. What do I need? Well, I need some way to legally protect myself, which is either an LLC, a C Corp, or an S Corp. I have to register a business. All right, I don't know how to do that. Well, I just saw this commercial for LegalZoom on television and for like 99 bucks, and you keep dialing it in and breaking it down to its core component of like what is it? If you don't know, find out. And
Did you
with
write this all down like in a list, or did you just have this like kind of floating around in your head?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean, I started to make a to-do list of like what had to happen in order just because, to make sure that things got done properly, especially when you're like, to register a business, you've got to like write a couple of checks, you've got to send some stuff out in the mail in certain places. So, there was definitely like, I'm a huge post-it guy. Like I keep lists on post-its like all over my desk and just throw them out when I'm done. So that's usually what I'm doing.
So let's say someone just decided to quit their job. What advice would you give them on like the next steps that they should be taking?
Yeah, so I think it could go two ways because sometimes people are like, oh, you should like totally go take a vacation, like take some time off because you're going to be hustling for the next 3, 6, 12 months or however long it is. Maybe it's 5 years
Mhm.
and you really need to get your mind in the right place for that. And I'd probably say you're right. I think you really need to, uh, if you quit your job and it hasn't been as premeditated as you had thought, and it was literally like mine was, where someone walked in and I was like, F this, I'm out of here. Like, then you really should take some time and dial in what is it that you want to do because I didn't at first, and I started taking every video client left and right, and that meant whether it was a wedding, whether it was a promotional video for a small business, whether it was a live stream, like whatever it was, I was taking everything. And then like people would be like, "Oh, you do video, like can you take photos? Like I need headshots." And I just take it because I thought that I needed the money.
Mhm.
Um, and I think I made a mistake in that because you want to brand yourself in a certain way. And if you're the video guy that does everything, it's not conducive to a successful business for the long haul. So I've definitely made changes over time for that. But taking this time to figure out, what do you want out of yourself over the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and probably 5 years, just so that you have a plan set in place of what you want and why you want it.
So then, how long did it take you before you were able to start being profitable and like actually making some real money?
Yeah, so I left in May of 2013, and when I first started to be profitable, meaning like was actually fully capable of moving out of my parents' house, was probably around, I'd say October of that year. And that's because in September, I went to a conference where I actually hired a coach for a 12-month long business coaching program. And that was my first time ever bringing on a coach. And I think within like the first maybe 2 or 3 months of bringing on that coach, which was $11,000, by the way, that I did not have in my bank
Wow.
account. I think I had like an $8,000 month or something like that. And that paid off, 3/4 of the coaching. So I'd have to say within like the first 2 or 3 months of bringing on that coach in September, was kind of, it was I can't say like a day, but it was kind of around that period. So, when you're about 4 to 6 months in, if you really hustled for it, then I think that it's definitely possible to stay afloat on your own.
So what did that coach tell you, or like, what was the coaching sessions like that you were able to have such a big change?
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot up front about like how I value my time and the service that I'm providing because uh, I think when you first start a business, you're like, I don't really know how much to charge. Like I've seen this everywhere. I've seen it on blogs, I've seen it on Reddit. People are like, I'm a graphic designer. How much do I charge? And the problem with it is no one logo, no one video, no creative project is going to take the same amount of time as any other.
Mhm.
You never know how much time someone's going to come back and say, you need to make all these revisions because that could mean another 5 hours, that could mean another 20 hours. And so figuring out what the value of my time was big. So the first thing that I worked on with that coach was like, how much do I want to make in a year? And I think I remember setting the goal of like, I think I said like 50 to 60,000 in the first year, and then I wanted to hit 100 by the second year. Um, and as soon as I did that, then it was much easier to figure out where my pricing was at. And also, having left my job and working more with local videographers in the community, I got to kind of like spy on their pricing and see a little bit about what they were doing. So when I first started, I was thinking like 25 or $50 an hour was solid. Like if I've spent a whole day filming your thing and I pull away like 300, 400 bucks, then I'm a happy camper. And I think that's because that's about how much I was making if you break down my salary from working for Apple. So I thought that was good enough. And what I found out was that on the higher end, bigger production studios can charge anywhere from like 300 to 500 an hour. And in like the middle ground where I was hoping to end up, I could charge anywhere from about $50 an hour to 200 an hour. So the first thing my coach had me do, and this was like the scariest thing ever, I was like, my prices are basically $50 an hour for shooting, 25 for editing. And she's like, all right, I want you to double it. And I was like a little uneasy about that, but after our first like coaching retreat where we brought everyone together, I was like, all right, like I'm gonna do this. So it went up to $100 an hour for shooting and 50 for editing. And ultimately it wound up at about 200 an hour for shooting. And then I actually found that it was even simpler to just charge a half day or a full day rate because if I've got to drive an hour and a half away for a video shoot and it only lasts an hour and a half, I should still be charging them my, 800 to $1,000 half day rate because of the time involved with traveling, even though I might have only been filming for all of like 40 minutes out of that hour and a half that I was there. So that was a huge deal for me was figuring out the pricing, so that it was more worth my time to do the things I was doing.
Going from your $50 an hour to $100 an hour, did the amount of clients kind of dip down, or did it remain about the same? How did that process go?
Believe it or not, I don't even think it impacted it at all because basically, like the next client came in and I was just like, here's my prices. And I mean, I had a few people here and there were like, oh, I think that's like a little too much for me. Like, I don't think I can do that. And I struggled with that for a second, but then I was like, wait a minute, okay, like they're not my target client. Like they're probably going to waste my time. They're probably looking for a much lower end video where it's like they literally want a college student to set up a camera and just shoot a 3 minute piece.
Mhm.
So it didn't really make sense to me to work with people like that. But as I started charging more, I found that the quality of clients coming in also went up too. And there's no true correlation because it wasn't like I was advertising, here's my prices, and people just started, sending me better clients. I think part of it was really just opening yourself up to the possibility of my work is actually really good and deserving of those type of prices.
And how were you going about getting new clients? It sounds like a lot of it's from referrals, but those initial first few clients, how did you get those?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate that I had connected very well in the marketing company that I had fresh out of college. So I was talking to entrepreneurs literally, everywhere from the East to the West Coast, whether it was Philadelphia or Maryland, which is my hometown in Baltimore, to people out in California. There was easily 50 or 60 people that I emailed right off the bat and was like, hey, like, here's my new adventure. Like, here's what I'm doing. If you need any support, let me know. I'm here to do that. So it really has been all referrals. And I actually haven't done any real marketing for my business other than like, meeting people at networking events, handing out business cards. I've never, put up Facebook ads trying to lead into video clients. I've never posted ads in the newspaper or commercials or anything like that.
And going back to your coach, so obviously she made you realize that your time's much more valuable. Was there any other kind of things that she did that really you thought helped you out a lot?
Yeah, I mean, she definitely connected me to a lot of the people that she was connected with because her being a coach, she knew a lot of other coaches, authors, speakers, people who were totally using video, but none of them really had a solid video person. So it made it much easier for me to be like, yeah, like I do all of her video. And she actually was a client of mine too. So I hired her as a coach, but she paid me to do a lot of video work for her, which was great because that also kind of convinced me to hire her because I wasn't so worried about paying $11,000 back.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she definitely referred me out to a ton of people, and to this day still sends out, if anyone's asking for a video person, they usually ask her and she'll just send them straight to me.
So $11,000 is obviously a lot of money. Is that something you'd recommend if someone, recently quit their job, maybe they've started up their business? Would you recommend they look in getting a coach, or was that specific to your situation?
I think that a coach is not only necessary, but I think it's almost a requirement if you're really serious about it. I think that everyone's going to be in a different place, right? So, like, if you quit your job and you have zero in the bank, or maybe you're in debt, you probably need to figure out the best way to get yourself, afloat first. Only because I don't know, I'm somebody who's like anti-debt, so like I never take on any debt. I always pay off everything every month. So get yourself to a solid point first. I wouldn't go out fresh out of the gate and start hiring a coach for, 10, $15,000 because that money you're fronting doesn't guarantee you money returning. So while if you do work with a good coach and somebody that knows what they're doing and has a proven track record, yes, you'll probably multiply your business 4, 5, 10 times. But that's the other thing too, is you have to be able to sort through them and figure out, who's the coach that's going to work best for me. There's tons of people out there that call themselves coaches and have one or two clients a month and maybe make a few $100 here and there, but I want a coach that's like, yeah, I made 250, $300,000 last year, and it's going to double this year. I want to find somebody who's doing one or two steps ahead of where I want to be.
Absolutely. Very nice. So now it sounds like you have a pretty successful video production company. What's next? I heard you're traveling a little bit. Like, what is all this for? Because it's great to not have a job, but unless there's something you're kind of striving for, it seems not as fun. So what is it for you?
Yeah, so I mean, a good question that I started to ask myself about 2 years into doing this was that, I wanted to know, is video something I'm passionate about, or is video something that I really enjoy because a lot of people know I'm good at it and a lot of people like my work? And that's a really hard thing to ask yourself when you're 2 years into your business and this is what you do for a living. And when the answer basically comes out to this is not 100% what you're passionate about, you need to make a change. And so starting in November of 24, 14, I actually took off an entire month, all of November, to travel hack my way and couch surf my way around the country to really just discover myself and who I wanted to be first. Because, I've always been taught, any coaches in sports have always said, go back to basics. Like if you're angry, if you're frustrated, if stuff isn't working, go back to your basics. So I'm like, what are my basics? And it goes back to that whole breaking it down again. Um, who am I? What are the things that I enjoy? And what's something that I could potentially pursue? And through that travel, I was so concerned the whole time that, I'm not working on my business, like I'm just flaunting around and destroying all the money that I've made and the clients that I've built up. And I was like, I know I have to do this. So I just kept going. And at the end of the month, I get back and I'm like, I had my iPhone and my laptop on me, and I was answering emails while I was gone. I had booked, and I didn't really notice this, it was just, habit. I had booked $6,000 in work while I was on the road. So, which more than paid for everything. All my flights were free through the travel hacking, so it was really just like a couple of Airbnb things and my food. So I really didn't spend a whole lot of money that whole month. Um, so, it was an interesting adventure, and it led me to a second adventure at the end of December where I took my roommate's my cousin. I kidnapped him, and I went on a 3,000-mile road trip around the country. And when we got back, this was where I started my next thing and where the idea came from was we're driving home. It's like New Year's Day. The last 2 months I've basically spent living out of bags, trying to figure out who I am and where I want to go. And I get home and I just see an article, people post stuff to Facebook all the time, and I'm like, it says or 2015 to be a year of purpose for many people. And I read through it and I thought about it for a second, and it's like you could read as many articles as you want on like how to hit your goals for this year, but unless you're actually doing something about it, it's not going to happen. And I don't want to be that guy who sets a goal and, like I want to lose 10 or 20 pounds in the gym, and 2 weeks into the year I'm not even going to the gym anymore. So how do I hold myself accountable and ensure that, I do something meaningful? And the year of purpose, those words from that title really stuck out to me. So I started a podcast, and the Year of Purpose podcast, it's on iTunes. And I just started sharing my message to the world of, here I am stuck in life, trying to figure out what's happening to me, what's happening to others, and really giving of myself to others. So interviewing people to find out what it is that got them to where they are now, and just dissecting and breaking it down. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. Is I'm about 6 months into this podcast. We've got almost 50 episodes in the can, and thousands of people listening all over the world now. So it's been kind of this adventure that I get to share with people, because I don't want to go out there and say I have it all figured out, because I don't. And anyone who does tell you that they think they've got it all figured out, I feel like they're lying, because part of life is you don't really figure it all out. You just enjoy the ride.
Hmm. I go every few months. I have 2 or 3 days where I feel like I figured it out, and then it just crashes from there. Like, oh, this is it. This is a blast. And then it's like, wait a minute, nope, never mind.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's definitely moments where you're going to be 100% at peace. Like I know that a lot of the times when I'm out on the water, I'm a huge fan of being on the water. I'm very at peace and everything is right in the world, but it's in that moment. And that's the thing, is most people are uh, totally missing out on that moment because they're like thinking about, what do I have to do tomorrow, or what do I have to do next week, or I don't have enough money in the bank. What do I need to do to get that money in the bank? So they miss out on those moments because they're certainly there, but you have to look for them.
Going back to your podcast, what are some of the big takeaways? Because you've had a lot of really interesting guests on your show. What are some of the big takeaways you've gotten from it?
Yeah, so there's a lot. I think that when I first started, one of the biggest things I learned was I started by using this list of pre-written questions, because I'm like, if I'm jumping on this interview with somebody and I only have 30 minutes, sometimes less because they like to talk at the beginning, like I need to get the answers that I'm looking for. And the problem with asking a set list of questions is you're going to get a set list of answers. And so I wasn't quite getting the answers that I wanted. So a big lesson I learned was you've got to ask better questions.
Mm.
So it was no longer like, how do I find my purpose? It was more of like, how do I overcome this struggle when I wake up one morning and I feel totally useless? That question's going to get you way further than just like, well, what is my purpose? It's kind of like in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy where they're like 42 and they're like, what, really? So asking better questions has been a huge one, and asking questions just in a different way. Like sometimes I'll get a totally different answer on an episode when I ask the same question, but just twice in two different ways. And I'll get more information that I didn't know about before, because everybody learns differently, everyone listens differently, and in this sort of stream of consciousness of them talking, there's always other ideas that come in. So sometimes they miss out on telling you what they really wanted to say. So that was probably the biggest one. I think as it progressed, I learned, and this was pretty interesting. I created this idea in my head that you find your purpose and you stick to it for like the rest of your life, and everything just kind of works. And I think the reason why I did that was because, we're raised to think you grow up, you get good grades, you get into college, hopefully it's a good one, and you put your diploma up on the wall after you get your first job, and you make all this money to pay off the debt from college. So hopefully, like when you get married, you can actually afford to have a kid, and you just work the rest of your life, and your script is kind of this pre-written thing. And so I was so used to thinking in that mindset of like you do the same thing for 30 or 40 years. And so one of the bigger lessons I learned over time was that your purpose can change. I'm not saying it's going to change every 5 minutes, but my purpose right now and what I get meaning out of in life is going to be totally different in about 12 months. And that's just really out of the nature of living. We experience so many things that change our perception over time. And so your purpose is going to change. So accepting that, first of all, and second of all, understanding that you don't have to stay with the same thing forever.
So I have one more question for you, and this is kind of a big question. I know you're still in your 20s, so it might be kind of hard to answer, but for all the 20-somethings out there listening, what advice would you give them if you could, give a general advice to the 20-somethings listening to this show?
Yeah, if I could, I wouldn't say if I could do it all over again, because I don't regret where I've gotten to right now. But I think that if you're in your 20s right now, and even in your 30s, if you're still stuck at this point, um, far too many people are stuck doing things that they hate. And you've seen all the quotes out there of like, we work a job that we hate to get money to buy things that we don't even want to impress people that we don't even like. And so I think that you've got to really take a step back and look at, what is it that you want out of life? It's way too short, and I know that sounds cliche, but having had two people when I was about 13 take their own life, trust me, it's way shorter than you realize. So I think that you need to figure out where it is that you want to go and just go totally crazy for it. Work as hard as possible to get what you want. Uh, the word hustle comes to mind all the time for me because it's not that now that I have my own business, I can wake up at, 10 o'clock in the morning and like eat breakfast and not even start working till like 1 in the afternoon, because that's totally not how it goes. Like I might have a weekend like that, but really like I'm getting up and I'm working from 8 a.m. until 11 o'clock at night right now. So, figure out what it is that really lights you up and go after that, because when you do, you're not even going to realize that you've been working a 16-hour day on it. And then it's really not even going to matter because you loved every second of it.
I love it. I totally agree with everything you said. Zephan, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so we've got the Year of Purpose podcast is available on iTunes. We come out with a new episode every Tuesday. It's available at www.yearofpurpose.com. And if you guys are on an Apple-friendly device, if you just go to getyop.com, it stands for Get Year of Purpose, getyop.com, it actually will flip over from the browser straight into the podcast episodes, and you can hit subscribe right there on the spot.
That's neat. All right. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, man, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, make sure you hit the big red subscribe button down below. You can also check me out on Facebook and on Twitter, and I release a new video every Monday, and by hitting that subscribe button, you'll get those new videos every Monday. And this is really a podcast. It's also a website. You can check out the website. It's howtodoyour20s.com. I'll put a link right over here as well. And what it's all about is trying to improve your life. And we specifically focus on things that people in their 20s are interested in. So make sure you like the video if you liked it, subscribe, like us on Facebook and Twitter, whatever. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again on another video.